landslide. You get the mineral, we get calamidad. You get a worker, we get the technology. You promised many aid, all we get is apology. Now we got to pay you, got to pay you back, to pay you, got to pay you back. You give us submachine guns, oh, we give you a military base. You give us nuclear plants, we get the radioactive waste. You give us guns and bullets, you give us hand grenades, you give us helicopters, so we could shoot each other down. We got to pay you, pay you back. Got to pay you back, pay you back. Oh, to pay you back. We got to pay you back, pay you back. We really love to pay you back. Love to pay you back, pay you back. We're still to pay you. Really pay you back, pay you back. Oh, dan soy tata baik-baik. Oh, dan soy tata hidup-hidup. Minum obat tata stum-stum. Minum obat tata uska galon. Oh, dan soy tata baik-baik. Oh, dan soy tata hidup-hidup. Minum obat tata stum-stum. Minum obat tata uska galon. Magsugod na sa kahaponon, tipin uska galon. Manang matin kamay rain tawon, ala palit na lang tungas galon. Way limbungay sa atong tagay, ang manglimbong itkas lagay. Way manghambog, walay matulog, ang manghambog matulog itkas itlog. O dandan soy tata pahit-pahit, o dandan soy tata init-init. Inom tuba tata aslom-aslom, inom tuba tata uska galon. Patang lubog sa tuba ni Sarasay, sakar sa dana sugatan iyang nanay. Iwalop sa nanay kay mi saring-saring, patang lubog sa karsada ni Kaliring. O dandan soy tata pahit-pahit, o dandan soy tata init-init. Inom tuba tata aslom-aslom, inom tuba tata uska galon. Dihay hubog sa tuba nagmaoy na, ang kaisugaw dugdog na ulinog. Panpagtingog sa kikik perting lagan, hubog nga nang asinawasan. O dandan soy tata pahit-pahit, o dandan soy tata hidit-hidit. Inom tuba tata aslom-aslom, inom tuba tata uska galon. O dandan soy tata pahit-pahit, o than that soy cha-cha, inom ko ba cha-cha, slow. Tuwing magpapasyal at dilim kumakagat, may tambal-tambal, nagyayakap ng lantad. Tunay nga ibig ko'y paibig ng lubos, lubos nang ako'y mangarap ng hindi tulog. Hairog, marinig ko lang tinig mong nang hahaplos. Di magtatagal, sasambulat ang loob. Tunay na ibig ko'y paibig ng lubos, lubos nang ako'y mangarap ng hindi tulog. Hairog, kahit nasaan, pag sa'yo ay nadantay, maaari bang di ako matatakam? Tunay nga ibig ko'y paibig ng lubos, lubos nang ako'y mangarap ng hindi tulog.
All right. Okay. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed those soothing tunes by Les to start this off. And so I just like to thank everyone for attending today. Like I always sound kind of awkward with these things, but we have lots of events, and I'm always just really pleased and like happy when people decide to show up, because I think they're all really great, but you don't have to be here, and it's always just means a lot when people take time out of their day to come to our events and spread love and appreciation. So just want to say thanks to you everyone for coming, and I'll kick it to Seda right now, and then we'll start. We'll have a little bit of our conversation about what this series for the month is about, what this week in particular is about. We have a different topic for each week, and then we'll go into the artists. We'll do their presentations, and then we'll be able to wrap it up with a nice Q&A. So yeah, I'll kick it to Seda, and then we'll discuss and just kind of keep it going.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. I want to say, Barrett, you look really nice with the blazer that you just threw on. You look like a professor. I'm going to start calling you the professor.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, so I'm Seda. I'm representing here with the SAMASAMA team. Barrett is from the Sustainable Culture Lab team. So if you all aren't familiar, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves and our organizations in a little bit as we keep going. But I wanted to say hi to all the familiar faces that showed up again. So thanks for joining us again this week. So, you know, obviously with COVID, SAMASAMA normally does their annual exhibit during May for AAPI month. And with COVID, we weren't able to actually do our in-person exhibit, but that didn't mean that we still didn't want to be able to showcase and some of the really amazing artists that has participated with us in the past. And then it kind of snowballed a little bit into these conversations that I had with Barrett from the Sustainable Culture Lab into a collaboration, and where the reason why we were really missing the opportunity to do the art show is the amazing conversations that come from the work itself. And so to us, it's like, it's not really just experiencing the art and being able to buy the art and being able to take the time to show the art, but to actually spend the time having the conversations based on what the artists are actually trying to share with us. That being said, you know, Sustainable Culture Lab was kind of the great opportunity to partner with, especially during this social political shift. that we are all experiencing right now, and the work that the Sustainable Culture Lab does. You know, Barrett will kind of get into it, but really it's kind of like the philosophical foundation that is where we are at in this country as people. So we went ahead and are now calling July Diaspora Peoples Month, because what is July known for in America? Independence Day, right? And obviously, you know, this is not really the country to really be celebrating that type of independence. So we're kind of taking it back, rearranging the narrative, and allowing our artists to do that. And I don't want to say artists as it's like mine, you know, you guys have your own sense of agency there, but allowing you all to really just kind of take these spaces and just share exactly what you've been doing, you know, portraying the really unique, diverse narratives that we are existing in this country, that diaspora narrative, which is an important part of what the America conversation is. So last week we kicked it off with philosophy and art, which again is sort of like that fundamental part of what we're doing here with the Sustainable Culture Lab. And then this week we are doing heritage and identity. Hopefully I got that right? We're doing heritage and identity. Just kidding, I kind of did that. But that means that's a loaded one, obviously, just because, you know, that's something personal to me, and really just kind of means a little bit different to every artist. Every artist that you're going to be seeing and hearing through the next couple of weeks, no matter what the theme is, it's not because they are plugged into that theme. That is not their box. It's just kind of connecting it to what under the umbrella of the theme that we choose. So I'll let Barrett talk a little bit of why the Sustainable Culture Lab and the work and the collaboration with the artist conversations are so important.
Yeah, thanks, Seda. So yeah, I forgot to introduce myself, but I'm Barrett Holmes Pittner. I'm the founder and philosopher-in-chief of the Sustainable Culture Lab, and our work is quite philosophical and linguistic, and it focuses on this word ethnocide. This is it's a very significant word, but like most people don't know about it. It's relatively new, and ethnocide is the destruction of culture while keeping the people, like the physical people. And we apply that framework to the transatlantic slave trade. So clearly the goal of that was by European colonizers to get African people, forcefully extract their culture, keep the bodies to create a chattel slavery system in the Americas, and then build the societies that they aspired to build in the Americas from that framework. We feel that the language of ethnocide really allows people to understand the cultural, racial, economic disparities and inequalities in the US, and it's a very foundational, important word. And that word, ethnocide, was invented in 1944. So it's really a brand new word. It was invented by Raphael Lemkin, who also invented the word genocide. So like, he was a Polish Jew who escaped World War II, who was fleeing the Nazis, came to the US, and he was trying to figure out a word to articulate the oppression and the atrocity that was being inflicted upon his people. And so he came up with genocide, which is genos is people, and side is murder, and also ethnocide, because that's culture and murder. And since Jewish people were people with a distinct culture, he felt those words would be interwoven. They over time split, and genocide became what we all know, and ethnocide's kind of been forgotten, and we are bringing that word back to describe the atrocities that happened in the U.S., the inequality, all the stuff that we're fighting against today. And I feel that this word gives like a pretty succinct framework and understanding to articulate a lot of the disparities and inequalities we face. I will say a key thing about why Sustainable Culture Lab and SAMASAMA have teamed up is that if you live in an ethnocidal society, you are living in a society that is based on destroying culture. And so if you want to counter that, if you want to counter the normalized destruction of culture, you then have to embrace culture. You have to embrace the creation of art. You have to embrace all the things that allow people to express their culture and thrive as people. And so that's a key component of our work. Another reason that we really embrace art quite a bit is philosophical linguistic work can be quite heavy. It can be, not everyone has time to sit down and read a 500-page book and and delve into this complicated stuff. So if we find artists who the medium and their language actually represents the complex ideas that we're talking about, it makes it so that these ideas are more receptive, more easily digestible to people. And like if you have a painting on the wall that represents ethnocide and your struggle against it, that painting will then be like a gateway into reading books and going to museums and doing all that type of stuff. And so us partnering with artists and doing things like this, where we're working with SAMASAMA to celebrate artists of color, to also then change the narrative, where like July is Diaspora People Month, where we're focusing on communities of color and not, you know, the fact that a bunch of white people back in the day just didn't like that they were getting taxed too much. It changes the narrative. And so that's our big philosophical foundation. And there's a lot of other stuff that we do that's not as, you know, artistic. I will say this is a quick plug for myself, but on Friday, I will be doing another webinar with the American Bar Association that will be specifically just talking about ethnocide and philosophy. So, you know, I'm doing the art on Wednesday, and then I'm doing the nerd stuff on Friday. And so,
thank you, Professor.
I have the
and you know, one thing about the philosophy, you know, the artist is sort of like the pushers of and the ones that are kind of delivering what the philosophy is in our culture is how I picture it. And artists really allow you to reimagine what the new reality or what the reality kind of should be. So before we actually get into our first artist too, I mean, I'm thinking for this particular topic for heritage and identity is a really unique one, I think, specifically to the diaspora people, because it can kind of be a little bit conflicting. I think when we exist in such like a westernized white, central white space, our identity is so existent within that space. And so when we have to think about our heritage, you know, how much are we allowing ourselves to take what type of heritage might be sort of a little bit too old, offensive, sort of racist in nature still. And we're talking about American culture specifically, and then for diaspora people that are taking the heritage and trying to reimagine them and reimagine themselves within this American existence, is a whole other conflicting dynamic, which can be beautiful if you are prepared to take on that journey. But also, again, when you're in this white space in white politics in America, it can actually sometimes be a little bit of an obstacle. So not to stick into that space too long. It's 7:20, so we are really excited to kind of introduce our first artist.
Can I say one last thing? You said something cool, so I want to just add to it real quick. I'll be quick. So
no, it's cool. It's cool. We had one artist having a technical difficulty joining, so we have a little bit of time to kind of stretch out.
So one thing that's really important about our work at SCL and our collaboration with SAMASAMA is talking about identity and heritage. And so I'm gonna tell you like one funny story and then like a serious one. About a couple months ago, actually more than a couple months ago, this was pre-corona where you could leave your house. I went to a wine tasting somewhere in Virginia. And at this wine tasting, I had some wine and I had never heard what it was. And the person told me that it was a Bordeaux blend, but since it's not in France, you can't call it a Bordeaux. If it's a Bordeaux blend, you have to have the grapes from Bordeaux. So I was like, so what's this called? And she told me that it was called meritage. And I was like, what is that word? I've never heard of meritage before. What's that mean? And she said that a bunch of white people in the US said, we're just gonna make our own Bordeaux blend. We're just not gonna call it a Bordeaux. We're just gonna call it our own thing. And that way we'll get around these rules saying that we can't sell Bordeaux. And so what they did is they got the word merit and heritage and combined them to make a word meritage. And it's like, they just stole somebody else's wine and they said that was their heritage and they had the merit to do it. That was just the most astonishing thing I've ever heard. And I think that's part of the dynamic of a lot of people in the US where we have to have conversations about heritage and the merit of our identity in a place that really is based around like fabricating false identities and elevating those as being above, you know, the legitimate identity of like a Bordeaux type of wine. And so like, I think a key thing about when we're talking about heritage and merit in the US is you have to make sure that you elevate voices of color, because more often than not, the narrative and identity of the US is one that they try to have where that culture has been erased from the story. And now we get a propagated image of the US that actually has never really existed. And so to make sure that we have an adequate picture of the US, we have to make sure that we elevate and create the space for this type of conversation where people of color get to tell their stories, and we hold those at the bare minimum an equal platform. But due to the need of us to hear these messages more than the ones we've always heard, it actually can be like first and foremost what our society needs to hear. And so that's why we are focusing on that today, and why I don't drink Meritage wine.
and this is where for you to show us the bottle of the Meritage wine.
It's like, I just couldn't believe it. I was just like, I'm not drinking this swill. Like, get this out of here, you know?
Like, who brought this guy in here to this winery?
The lady was not pleased with me. I was like, this is an abomination. I'm not drinking that wine. And anyways, so.
Was that the funny and the serious story?
So the funny story was the Meritage, and then the serious story was just the important.
The full circle.
I'm a storyteller, you know?
No, I love it. All right, now we get to hear the story of one of our artists, Ina Padua, currently living in Washington, D.C. and representing the Puerto Rico and Filipinx diaspora. Ina Padua's art focuses on an expression of their political self, existing as a young brown queer non-binary person. Originally using their practice as a form of release, Ina's work now focuses on cultural and political reflections, in short. But I'll let you kick it off. Welcome. I really like your background. Is that part of your work or just?
Hey, can everyone hear me? Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. This is my background, just because I'm in my home office and it's pretty bland. So I figured I would use this. If you go to the Studio Ghibli website, you can just pull any of their backgrounds for Zoom specifically, which is why I have it. It's kind of weird because I'm using my phone microphone and I can like see myself, but like not hear myself. So I'm gonna just go ahead and share my screen. Let's see. Can folks see not my personal notes and my presentation?
Yes. Cool. Just your presentation, no notes.
Very awesome. Yeah, so folks just bear with me. I'm a little bit nervous. This is the first time I'm doing anything like this before. And I wanted to thank Les and SAMASAMA and the Sustainable Culture Lab for, hosting such an event that allows folks to talk about, where they come from and like the cultural work that people are putting into just putting out into the world. And I think in this political moment in the United States, it's important to recognize the liberation of community, or of my community, the recognition of how I see the importance of recognizing liberation is by recognizing in this political moment, especially in the United States, that without recognizing Black liberation, I can never really recognize the liberation of my own people. So recognizing the Black liberation and the Black liberation movement, both in the United States and internationally, and also, building that education and, work throughout my own people's communities. So I have these little earrings on. I'm an activist and organizer for Anakabayan, Washington, D.C., which is a group, a small chapter of a larger organization of Filipino youth here in the U.S. We're the largest overseas chapter of Anakabayan, and we focus on fighting for liberation of the Filipino people and for like true national democracy with a socialist perspective. And that's what I do mostly in my time. I I actually am not really much of a painter or a writer, but these are things that I started to do. And through being friends with Les, Les was like, hey, you should submit to SAMASAMA. And I'm like, I'm super nervous and I get really sweaty easily. So I don't know how much of a good idea that would be. But so yeah, cool. I will start with my presentation. So yeah, the places where I create from are places of political awakening and agitation and self-exploration, which are like two kind of themes that I want to talk about. And so the layout of it is like, I'll show some of the art pieces that I want to share that like kind of tie into like who I am and where I started painting and where I started writing, which are two aspects of both like, I would say my identity and my political identity and my heritage. And also like how like the transition of my gender identity kind of was interwoven with that. Let's see. Yeah, so this is my first piece. I don't know, folks can see my presentation and not my notes, right? This whole Zoom thing is super new to me.
Just presentation, no notes.
Sweet. So this is something I actually worked on for a friend. And it was just a pair of overalls that my friend saw me painting and was like, yo, dude, you should like really paint these overalls that I had. And I had committed to it. It actually took me more than a couple of months just because I was like really stuck and not really sure where to begin. And I think around the time that I started working on painting, I was really just I was always angry and like coming from a place of trying to understand like who I was and struggling with gender identity. So yeah, this is, it's called grabe, which is kind of like an expression in Tagalog for like, I don't know, like, Les, maybe you can like also help me out, but like people usually say it with this sense of like, oh my gosh, drama, like, I can't believe you're doing that. And this painting,
this is
yeah.
less. So grabe is like too much, or like when something is a little extra, but then also when you're surprised, like grabe, you ate all that's corn, something. That's why did I say corn? Anyways, that's it.
Yeah, essentially. So I figured it would be kind of like, there's this body here that is like clearly indulging in self-exploration, and oftentimes I feel like folks that are assigned female at birth who are like exploring their gender identity, exploring their sexuality, are often told that like you're doing too much, or you're speaking out too much, or you're doing something that really is not to be shared or to be shown or to be celebrated. And the person that I gave these to, I felt like embodied a lot of like power and like was doing everything that they could to like, show themselves. And I think it's really important to recognize like super strong, kind of like, just like strong identity and strong sharing of like, I think being out there in the world is also a sense of resistance. Yeah, so this is my second piece, Thoughts Will Grow, which also kind of like in the same vein. I was going through kind of like, just like I really don't know how to explain, but Thoughts Will Grow essentially is just like, you see it as like a plant, kind of like this idea of wanting to explore oneself and like, but like the idea of body image and both the body being separated from, well, in terms of who I am, like my body separated from being here. And I think when I was painting it, I was feeling a lot of like is caught in being a body of an island, like being from an island and not actually ever having lived there, and also struggling with who I am and my gender. Most of my life I've been, identified as a female or a woman. And I think the way I had painted this body was to be somewhat of like not identifiable by gender, it's somewhat, you know, how I was feeling at the moment. Yeah, and just kind of like vibrant and tropical colors. Like that's how, you know, that's how I imagine myself in existence, is like not, you know, I've always enjoyed, you know, colors. So yeah, this is kind of the underlying themes to the two pieces that I was working on, and this is a poem that I wrote that I'd like to share with you all. On being a gay boy. I started wearing glasses when I was 13, but I couldn't see clearly until I was in my 20s. I was maybe 16 when I tasted sweet fruits for the first time. Felt like I was my mother and my father, when neither could be one, and turns out I could be both and none. So yeah, these are just images from my life, things that I've either seen or taken photos of or have drawn myself. And yeah, I really didn't understand why I had felt so caught in between identifying with what I was told, you know, at birth, like that I had to identify as one thing, and then really felt like I was, you know, I just felt like a boy my whole life, and not really a boy in the sense of like, oh, like you're a man, like you're trans. And so that's not really how I felt, but I did feel like I always felt like, why was I struggling with not wanting to identify as a man and not wanting to identify as a woman, but wanting to identify as like a sense of like femininity in being like a gay man, but not, that's kind of where I was coming from with these pieces. So that's kind of like the underlying theme of like gender identity for my first two pieces. And this was a way to tie those in together. And this is how like I would see myself. To be honest, I worked a lot on this presentation like last night at like 4 a.m. because Les was like, yeah, just like present from the heart. And I was like, oh, I don't know what that means. So I'm just gonna like make a collage. Maybe that'll help me like figure out how to explain these things to all of you. So that's where this is. And I really appreciate Les for pushing me forward to do these things. And the two pieces that I'll be showing are really more about like political awakening. And I haven't had much time. I started painting this year. And so the second two pieces are more so about the work that I've been doing and organizing with Ina Padua. I had started to organize from a place of anger. I grew up working most of my life since I was 15, doing a lot of under the table jobs that I wasn't really like told were like bad things to do because I was like making cash. And I think that, you know, I realized those things were wrong. It's not right for a 15-year-old kid to be working from first thing in the morning at a shop by themselves until midnight, closing up shop. And I worked, you know, I've been working ever since. And I realized most people in my family, that's the same story. And it made me angry. And that was kind of like where I started organizing. You know, people always tell you there's somebody should do something about that. That's the phrase that I've heard most of my life. And it always felt like nobody wanted to do anything about that. It was always somebody. And I think for me, that's where I felt like, okay, well, I'm going to fucking be that someone. I have to, you know, organize within my community, fight for the people that I care about from being, you know, exploited in the workplace. And that kind of like broadened my desire to learn more about what is the lineage of my mother, what is the lineage of my father, and like if my story aligned up with their stories in like nuances and in subtle variations because of time, you know, what is tying a lot of the reasons why people are suffering together. And that's where I started organizing. And, you know, painting for me was like, oh, it was an easier way for me to just like explain what people, like what I was seeing within my communities, and how angry I was without, you know, setting shit on fire. Yeah, so this is a very small canvas. I actually have it here in front of me. It's very tiny. Oh, wow. When I do this, you can't really see it, but it's very tiny. It's a 2x2. When I started painting, I found out it was really easy to do things for somebody who's always busy if you do it on a 2x2 canvas, because you can get it done that night. So that's how I started painting. So this piece is called Ang Terrorista o Masa, which means the terrorists or the masses. And it's a collage of both activists here in the US that are fighting against, you know, imperialism and global and militarization in the Philippines, which, you know, as Sara had mentioned, I'm both Filipino and Puerto Rican, but I primarily organize within the Filipinx community. So this is like a collage of people who are taking to the streets here in the United States last year during the People's State of the Nation address in the Philippines. A collage of farm workers, factory workers in the Philippines illustrated, and I painted together. And I painted this, you know, not too far after PSONA, which People's State of the Nation address. And I call it terrorists or masses because right now politically in the Philippines, I don't know for those of you who know what's happening in the Philippines right now, but the current president is one who, if you know him, is close friends with our president here, which means he is a fascist, which means he's a dictator, which means he doesn't care about poor people, which means he doesn't care about indigenous people, which means he doesn't care about workers. So in recent events, actually last week, the president had pushed through with this anti-terror bill. And the anti-terror bill is a blatant violation of human rights and a law that broadly, like, is just a broad law that threatens basic human rights for people to speak out. It essentially labels anyone as a terrorist, both Filipino and non-Filipinos in the Philippines who speak out against the current political regime, who speak out about, you know, demanding PPE, who demand mass testing, who demand basic things such as, like, you know, a living wage. What's happening in the Philippines right now is something that we're seeing as a parallel with what's happening globally with presidents who are, you know, not listening to the masses. The current, I think it's, for me and most people, I would imagine when, you know, a president responds to the demand of, you know, mass testing or basic human rights to increase militarization is like, that it just sounds like you're not listening, you're not reading the room. And that's kind of like where this came from. It's just a small little canvas. And these two pieces are also 2x2s. And they're called Awakening. I had painted them when I was going through a really hard time, right? I was organizing, like I had just started organizing here in DC, and learning about, you know, I'm constantly learning about what's happening in the Philippines. And also, you know, in my day job, I organize for a racial economic justice coalition here in DC. So I would say that the first image is me seeing things for the first time and not really knowing, like, I didn't really have the tools or the words to say, like, why I was angry, why I was dissatisfied with what was going on. And I would consider the second image somebody who has waken up, somebody who sees the world and recognizes that in order to fight what's happening, you have to do it together. You have to do it with the masses, and you have to listen to, like, what are the needs of the people. And I think that I put these two together because it feels like a strong moment in my life where I felt like, you know, like awake for the first time. Yeah. And so I wrote a kind of like a summarizing theme or poem about my identity as being a child of two islands. And this is it. On being a child of twin islands, lines of gunpowder from two islands cross, ships of mangoes and rice being shipped 3 worlds over, and not a single mouth fed. Rage of the masses, love for the people, spark of a prairie fire. And when thinking about my identity and thinking about heritage and where I come from, I kind of have taken a step back and realized that being Puerto Rican and being Filipino, I never really was able to connect the two. I was always struggling as a kid. Like I didn't know, like, okay, am I more like my father? Am I more like my mother's family? Like why, you know, people for trying to get me to speak Spanish, people trying to get me to speak Tagalog. And I think once I became politically aware of what was happening in the Philippines, I realized that there are such vast parallels with colonization, right? I was actually in the Philippines, I think 2 years ago, and I was at the People's State of the Nation in the Philippines, where people from all over the island were taking to the streets to fight against Duterte. And I was there, and I saw this flag, and I was like, that's not a Puerto Rican flag, is it? Like, how is that possible? So I run over to these people, and I'm like, how'd you guys get here? Like, how'd you hear about this? Like, how are you in the Philippines right now taking to the streets, repping Puerto Rico? And they were like, we see the direct parallels with US imperialism in both of our islands, from colonization by the Spaniards to now, and it's important for us to fight in solidarity with one another. And my mind just exploded. It felt like 2 lines of gunpowder crossing and meeting. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I think international solidarity is so important, and showing up for folks. The accumulation of masses showing up together globally is the spark of a prairie fire. Like, we all come from lines of gunfire or gunpowder. Yeah, and that's my stuff. I don't know how to better explain it than that. I hopefully didn't take up too much time.
Not at all. That was amazing. For you saying you were nervous and it's your first time a natural, and it's because it came from you. So thank you so much for sharing that. International solidarity, really, really appreciated that.
Yeah. If I can give one more plug, if
of course.
In DC right now, actually right now, they're because of the anti-terror bill, right? Filipinos in DC and allies alike have taken to the streets right now, like to the Philippine embassy, maybe an hour before this, and still are probably there, but are trying to fight against the current anti-terror bill, and fighting so many other latent acts of human rights violations and mass killings in the Philippines. If anyone is interested in getting more involved, we're actually trying to mobilize folks at the end of the month to this march that is going to tie in local issues that we're currently seeing. We're trying to tie in community members with what's happening both in the Philippines and internationally with the basic violation of human rights. So if you're interested, email me, DM me on Instagram. I know that Les has plugged my Instagram on here. I can give you my phone number. I can call you. You can call me. I'm very much please, if you're interested in getting involved, I'd love to talk more about it with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, don't worry, everybody. You're going to get all the follow-up contact and information after this, as well as the ability to purchase the work that you are seeing tonight. I really appreciate everything you said. Not to make it about me, I'm just here. But, you know, I completely relate as far as like coming from a country where you have a kind of leader that is very damaging to the development of a potential of a country. I come from Cambodia, where my parents came here in the 80s after the genocide. And, you know, Cambodian people survived a genocide, if you can even really call it surviving. But anyhow, so I really appreciate everything that you said, and I connect with that. What was I going to say? There was something that I that I was thinking about, but when you were talking about the international solidarity, it kind of had me go a different way. So Barrett, if you wanted to actually follow up with something while I gather my thoughts.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So, you know, one thing that I noticed right at the beginning of your presentation was the statements of solidarity with African American movements to get your freedom. Yet your story of your identity was so much of an identity forged outside of America in many ways, you know, like 2 islands and the Philippines and Puerto Rico too. So I'm just kind of curious as to how you articulate the Black experience and how it's interwoven in your experience, and how through learning more about the Black experience or having solidarity with it, you can find your own liberation.
Yeah. I don't know if you can still hear me, but
I can hear you.
I didn't always recognize it, to be honest, right? I only recognized Filipinos and I only recognized Puerto Ricans. And growing up, you know, there's like a vast amount of anti-Blackness that manifests in the Puerto Rican and Filipino community. Why? Because of white supremacy, because of colonization, because of U.S. imperialism, and recognizing that how I recognize the liberation of the Black community and like the Black revolution that's happening right now is by doing the deeper education on, like, you know, understanding the history of state violence and militarization and the tactics that the U.S. has used on Black folks here, and how they've implemented it in like a variety of ways globally on both Black people and people with like throughout the globe. And I didn't always recognize it, but I'm doing more and more education within my own community, within the Filipino community, about how anti-Blackness has manifested in the Philippines, and from colonization up until now, you know, what advertisements we see, what promotion of products we see. With like, I grew up using this soap. I don't know, for folks that are on the call know what papaya soap is, but in the Philippines, or bellow soap, it's whitening soap. It's soap to make your skin look lighter. And the level of colorism that we see in the Philippines, that's only the surface level of anti-Blackness. It goes so much deeper into like race and class, and understanding the importance of how like the white oppressor has implemented ways to divide communities. I think doing that education and recognizing how the Black community has shown up for Filipinos during I forgot which war it was, but there was, you know, Black Americans who came to the Philippines fighting on the behalf of the United States. You know, the United States is like, oh, we're helping the Philippines gain independence, when in reality they're pillaging land and they're using our country's land for military-based practice. And, you know, the Black soldiers recognized this is not right. This is, you know, we're fighting. What we claim to be fighting for is actually not, you know, helping the Filipino community. And they defected from the US military and joined like the Filipino community and fight for their liberation. And so when I say that my liberation is directly interwoven with recognizing the Black liberation movement, I think that's like a very like clear example to me. And just recognizing that I personally need to do a lot more work in understanding how anti-Blackness is manifested within the Boricua community, within the Puerto Rican community itself. But that's how I see it being connected, and just recognizing the ways in which the United States has used the same or used similar methods of exploitation globally, right? I think there's so many parallels. When I first moved to DC, I had just came from the Philippines and saw, well, I just came back from visiting the Philippines. I'm actually from New Jersey, but how contractualization, which is like this unstable workway to like ensure that workers have no security. I was watching contractualization happen with factory workers in the Philippines. And as I started working here in DC, saw the contractualization of construction workers, primarily Black and brown folks here in DC, their rights, because there's no job security in both the construction working industry here and the factory working industry in the Philippines. It gave this like temporary status for workers. So they didn't have things like, you know, health insurance, basic securities, basic negotiation for wages. I can clearly go on and on about exploitation, but yeah.
No, it's really, I'm just really glad to hear, because I'll say at a personal level, like as an African American, I've always recognized that like the structure of oppression for my people essentially became the template for how America would try to oppress all sorts of other people in this country and around the world. But what ends up happening is if you articulate that in a way, it can seem as though you're elevating, or you're saying that your struggle or your oppression is like more important than somebody else's, and you're dismissing their experiences. And it's actually like a really hard, like linguistic obstacle to overcome, where you let people know that like you're not trying to dismiss any of their experiences, but you are trying to say that I think the experiences of African American people who have been here in this situation in the US for an extended period of time can be quite informative to what is most likely going to befall you in like the, you know, the near future and the present. And so my work with the word ethnocide, I hope that helps articulate this dynamic to people without causing like that conflict that sustains division. But I think at this point Seda should kick it to our next artist, so we keep the ball rolling. Sound good, Seda?
Yeah.
Yep.
If I could just do one more shameless plug for tomorrow.
Go for it.
Sorry. You had mentioned like the interconnectedness of like liberation between peoples, and tomorrow there's going to be like a group conversation or panel called Resisting Imperialism, a global conversation with folks from my organization, Anak Bayan, Black Youth Project 100, BYP 100, the DC chapter, Pan-African Community Action, the DC chapter, Occupation Free DC, which is fighting for Palestinian rights, and Party for Socialism and Liberation. We're going to be having an interactive panel and discussion with folks. So for those of you that are interested, I'm going to put my socials down below and you can reach out to me. But yeah, thanks for this opportunity, y'all.
No, of course, put that in the chat, because we obviously have information about your presentation and your work in there for that specific initiative. Feel free to put that in the chat, and we can also send it out when we do the follow-up of the registration. Yeah, I mean, in order to really kind of understand our existence here, and where we're kind of going, especially when we think about all the really broken policies that kind of put people of color, BOPC, in this space here in America, you know, we actually kind of have to sort of understand the whole international aspect of it, the geopolitics of it. And speaking of geopolitics, we've got actually an artist coming up, Miss Muriel Villalobos from Chile. Hailing from Chile, we're here in DC, Northeast DC, and what we're really excited about here is that she's actually going to be doing her presentation in Spanish. So if you all are, if you all understand it, great, follow along. And then we're actually going to be doing a translation in the chat. And the Q&A, she obviously, you know, Muriel feels comfortable taking the questions also in English as well. So if there are any questions, you can also just put it in the chat. Muriel is here from Chile. She is part of my nice friend and family circle, so I'm really proud to have her actually speak on her work. She is pretty chill about the powerfulness of what she puts out there. So this will be the first time she's actually talking about her work as well. And I think just seeing the trend between Ina and Muriel, it's just really inspiring, as well as like political work. But very much from the heart and the existence of, from the diaspora perspective there. So Muriel, I'll let you kick it off.
Thank you so much, friend, for that words. So hi, everyone. I'm Muriel Villalobos. I'm from Chile. Nice to see you all here. Thank you for being here today. I'm so excited, but I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous too because it's my first time doing this. So deep breath. Okay, so I'm gonna do my presentation in Spanish, but my mother language. But before that, I would like to thank Sarah and Les, and of course Barrett, for inviting me to be part of this beautiful project today. I'm really excited to be here. I'm really appreciate. So thank you so much. So all right, here I go. Let me put my presentation. It's my first time doing this, so please don't pressure.
Oh, what's up, Barrett?
Muriel, quick question.
Yeah.
For the translator, just to clarify, you want to speak in Spanish, and then will you take like a quick pause so that she's not translating the whole thing at the end? Or
Yeah, so I already text her, and we decided that we are gonna do like per paragraph. So I'm gonna do one paragraph first, and then I'll stop, and then she can translate everything.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, thank you. So let me ask Christian to help me, please. I need help to share the presentation.
Oh,
Here.
Muriel's getting ready. I was also thinking about, oh, nope, there she goes. Never mind.
Oh, sorry, but go ahead. We can wait for you.
No. I was just gonna
Go ahead.
Okay, so, okay, I'm gonna start my presentation in Spanish. So, comencé a dedicarme a la ilustración de manera real hace un poco más de un año. Justo coincidió con mi llegada a este país. Yo me mudé desde Chile en mayo del año pasado. Comencé a hacerlo solo por diversión y de a poco me fui dando cuenta de que a la gente le gustaba mi trabajo. Con la ilustración me gusta expresar y visualizar tanto situaciones ordinarias como problemáticas contingentes a nivel social. Y para mí la ilustración es un mecanismo de expresión y a la vez es una herramienta muy útil a la hora de poder esparcir un mensaje a través de redes sociales.
I started to dedicate myself to illustration in a real way, a little over a year ago. It just coincided with my arrival to this country. I started to do it just for fun, and little by little, I realized that people liked my work. I like to express and visualize both ordinary situations and also real social themes and social problems.
So, durante este proceso, en mi país, Chile, en octubre del año pasado, comenzó el estallido social, un movimiento social de protesta en contra de un abuso sistemático que ha sufrido la clase media y pobre de Chile durante épocas en beneficio de los más ricos. Cuando todo esto comenzó en el mes de octubre del año pasado, yo ya me encontraba viviendo acá en Estados Unidos, y mi única manera de informarme fue a través de redes sociales, de los testimonios de mi familia, de mis amigas y amigos, y me sentí tan lejana a mi país que de verdad me dolía el hecho de no poder estar más cerca. Sentí que fue un hito histórico que marcó un antes y un después en Chile, y sentí que yo me lo estaba perdiendo. Por eso una de las formas de sentirme más cerca y conectada con el estallido y con mi pueblo fue comenzar a hacer ilustraciones que reflejaran lo que Chile estaba viviendo.
During this process in my country in Chile, in October of last year, the social uprisings began. Social movement of protests against the systemic abuse that the poor and the middle class of Chile were suffering or had suffered during times for the benefit of the wealthy. When all this started, I was already living in the United States. My only way to be informed of the uprisings was through social networks and the testimonies and stories of my families and friends. I felt so far away from my country that it hurt me not to be closer. I felt it was a historic milestone, and I was missing it. One of the ways to feel closer and connected to the uprisings, was to start drawing and creating illustrations that reflect what Chile was experiencing.
Dichas manifestaciones, las primeras del mes de octubre, se caracterizaron por ser masivas y pacíficas, como por ejemplo lo fueron los cacerolazos masivos en Plaza Italia, pero sin embargo la manipulación de los medios de comunicación por parte del gobierno fueron un elemento esencial a la hora de criminalizar el movimiento. De hecho, nuestro nefasto presidente, Sebastián Piñera, declaró que el país se encontraba, cito, en guerra en contra de un enemigo implacable, decretando así un estado de emergencia. Y la implementación del toque de queda fue un evento totalmente significativo en mi país, ya que fue la primera vez que se declaró nuevamente desde el retorno a la democracia por razones de desobediencia civil.
So these demonstrations were characterized by being massive and peaceful, like the pot and pan protests, but nevertheless, the manipulation of the media by the government was an essential element in criminalizing the movement. In fact, our nefarious president, Sebastián Piñera, declared that the country was at war against a relentless enemy, decreeing a state of emergency. The implementation of the curfew was a highly significant event in my country, since it was the first time that it had been declared since the return to democracy, and was the reasons given being civil disorder.
So, hacer uso del ejército en nuestro país no es algo tan sencillo, porque significa volver a abrir una herida que aún no está sanada del todo, ya que durante la dictadura de Pinochet hubo una violación sistemática de los derechos humanos, y aún hay chilenos que se preguntan dónde se encuentran sus familiares desaparecidos. Entonces, más allá de haber sido una decisión nefasta y desproporcionada bajo todos los niveles que se le mire, esta avivó mucho más el odio y el resentimiento en todos los chilenos.
So unfortunately, the use of force is actually something that was opening the wounds of that had not been healed in my country, especially since the time of Pinochet and by the military dictatorship at that time. The violations of the human rights by the police began, and were unable to continue to. Oh, sorry. Disculpa, ¿me puedes decir la última frase que usted dijo?
Que más allá de haber sido una decisión totalmente nefasta y desproporcionada, el hecho de haber implantado un toque de queda volvió a abrir la herida de muchas familias chilenas, y lo que causó mucho más odio y ganas de salir a la calle por parte de los chilenos.
So this decision was actually an extremely unpopular decision made by the government, and it caused a lot more hate in the hearts and homes of the families in Chile, which actually caused them to go out into the streets and begin their uprisings, their protests.
Thank you. So, lamentablemente la violación a los derechos humanos fue algo, como era de esperarse, la violación de los derechos humanos comenzó a ser visible en las calles por parte del abuso de poder de fuerzas policiales, tanto policiales como militares. Miles de heridos, muertos, civiles que perdieron sus ojos debido a disparos a quemarropa por parte de la policía, abuso sexual ejercido por militares y carabineros, tanto contra menores de edad, mujeres y hombres, uso excesivo de la fuerza y un abuso de poder sin precedentes desde la vuelta a la democracia de los 90.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the violation of human rights by police forces began, and there were thousands of wounded civilians who had lost eyes because of the bullets fired by the police. We started to see sexual abuse by the military and the police, an excessive use of force and an abuse of power, unprecedented, against women, against youths, against minorities, unprecedented since the return of democracy in the 90s.
A nivel personal, lo más triste para mí fue ver todo esto a través de una pantalla, no tener la posibilidad de estar en las calles marchando con mis compañeras, con mis compañeros y siendo protagonista de este proceso histórico de Chile. Y si bien yo vengo de una familia de muchos privilegios, no puedo hacerme la ciega y decir que la demás gente no sufre, no sé cómo decir esto bien. No puedo hacerme la ciega con mi entorno solamente porque a mí no me afecta directamente. No puedo pretender y declarar que el sistema en Chile está bien simplemente porque a mí no me afecta. Yo creo que todo está en el ser empático, en el ver tu entorno, en el mirar al de al lado, no solamente tus zapatos, y querer que las cosas funcionen para todos, no simplemente por unos pocos. Para mí se trata de justicia e igualdad.
Mm-hmm. On a personal level, the saddest thing for me was being in the United States and not being able to be on the streets protesting, supporting the cause, and marching for dignity that has been taken from us. Although I come from a family with a lot of privilege, I cannot be blind or cannot turn a blind eye to my environment and pretend that the whole system is fine just because it doesn't affect me. And I don't know how to say this, but it's being empathetic and realistic, of wanting things to work out for everybody, and it's about justice and equality.
Pasando a otro lado y dejando un poco de lado como los temas oscuros y grises que caracterizaron un poco el estallido social, me gustó también enfocarme en la unión que vi los chilenos. En mis 26 años nunca vi chilenos unidos por una sola causa. Digo, el estallido social es un movimiento que no tiene líderes políticos, no tiene poderes políticos, es un descontento a nivel general, a nivel país, a nivel nacional. Y eso a mí me conmovió mucho al ver a mi país a través de redes sociales unidos por una sola causa, que es la igualdad. Y eso también lo rescato mucho y fue uno de los temas en que me enfoqué para realizar distintas ilustraciones durante este proceso.
I also wanted to show the union between Chileans that is characterized by this outbreak, by these uprisings. In my 26 years, have not seen such Chilean unity, locally and nationally. It was a fight that had no political leaders or leanings, but that brought us together as a common struggle for dignity. During this process, one of the largest marches in Chile took place, where there was over a million people attended, all united for the same reason, to achieve equality and dignity in living.
Un segundo, give me a second. Okay. So, ahora voy a hablar del movimiento feminista, que es otro de los grandes ejes que me inspiran al momento de hacer mis ilustraciones. A nivel personal, el feminismo ha sido uno de los movimientos que más me ha cambiado a mí, mis paradigmas, tanto internos como con el mundo. Le agradezco mucho porque gracias a esta corriente puedo decir que soy una nueva mujer, una nueva persona y sigo creciendo día a día gracias a esto. Le agradezco a mis compañeras, a mis hermanas y a mis profesoras que siempre han estado conmigo durante este proceso de construcción, que como ustedes sabrán, mujeres, muchas veces llega a ser un poco abrumador el cuestionarnos todo nuestro entorno desde el que nacimos hasta ahora, es un poco abrumador el cuestionarnos todo. y ponernos mano a la obra para cambiarlo. Pero enfocándome en Chile en sí, el movimiento feminista durante este último año ha tenido una gran aceptación y un auge masivo. De hecho, la pasada marcha feminista del 8 de marzo en Chile tengo acá el dato, dame un segundo, aproximadamente 2 millones de mujeres chilenas marcharon por las calles de Santiago, em, eh, haciendo visible que la violencia de género ya no tiene cabida en Chile, que ya no la vamos a tolerar y que ya estamos cansadas de que nos maten y nos violen solo por el hecho de ser mujeres. Se marchó, entre otras cosas, por el fin a la violencia patriarcal y a la violencia de género, por la creación de un modelo educativo feminista y no sexista, por la instauración de un sistema laboral con seguridad social y perspectivas de género, protección para las mujeres indígenas y las mujeres migrantes, inclusión de las disidencias y las minorías sexuales, entre otras. Y si bien las demandas feministas o las demandas desde las mujeres se están escuchando a las calles, nos siguen matando y nos siguen violando y no es seguro para ninguna mujer ser mujer en este mundo. Puedo rescatar que la revolución ya comenzó y es difícil dar un paso atrás, pero siento que queda mucho camino por delante y es por eso que como mujeres debemos estar unidas y luchando tanto en la esfera pública como en la esfera privada de nuestras vidas contra el patriarcado.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about my feminist work, and I'm so grateful to all the women in my life, both my family and my friends, so that I am able to grow and actually question everything and put everything into under like a microscope and be able to grow from all of those learnings. Feminism has been the most significant movement on a personal level to which I have attribute myself to. My way of relating to the world has changed with my colleagues and with myself. It's been a very positive aspect of my life, and I thank my classmates and teachers who have been a part of my deconstruction for all the support in this process that can often become overwhelming. The feminist movement has also had a strong boom and a wide support in Chile. On March 8th, one of the most significant marches that has been seen in Chile took place. Approximately 2 million Chilean women marched throughout the streets of Santiago, making it clear that gender violence in any of its expressions will no longer be tolerated. We marched, among other things, to end patriarchal violence, the creation of feminist and non-sexist educational models, and establishment of labor systems with social security and gender perspective, protection for migrant and indigenous women, inclusion of minorities and all others. Although demands today are being shouted on the streets, they continue to kill and rape us, and it's still not safe to be a woman in this society. But the takeaway from this revolution has already started, and what we take away from this is that the revolution has already started, and we're not going back. There's a paradigm shift, or at least this is already taking place in the newer generations. There's a long way to go, and that is why as women, we must be united in fighting both in public and in private spheres of our lives against patriarchy.
El movimiento feminista en Chile hoy también cumple un rol fundamental y protagonista debido al nuevo proceso constituyente que vamos a vivir los chilenos en el mes de octubre, donde buscamos votar a favor de la dictación de una nueva constitución que nos rija con el fin de erradicar la actual constitución que nos rige, la cual fue promulgada en plena dictadura con plena violación de los derechos humanos, lo cual es totalmente absurdo que nos sigamos rigiendo por una carta magna con tales características, y es por eso que el feminismo considero que tiene un papel fundamental en este proceso, ya que es el momento de como mujeres incluyamos nuestras demandas, nos hagamos escuchar con miras a conseguir la igualdad en relación con los hombres. Nunca más puede ni va a ser sin nosotras. Eso es algo que debemos todas enfocarnos, y no debemos olvidar que al final del día lo personal es político.
Mhm. The feminist movement plays a fundamental role in the social movement in Chile today, due to the constituent process constituent process established for the month of October. La Constitución, due to a constitution in the month of October, where there's a call to vote in favor of a new constitution drafted through an assembly where it seeks to eradicate our current constitution, and was promulgated in the middle of the dictatorship, since it's necessary to include the demands that we have in order to demands of women, to include the demands that women have in order to achieve equality in relation to men. It can never be written without us again. At the end of the day, we must not forget that the personal is political.
Ahora pasando a otro tema de los derechos humanos que ha estado en la palestra estos últimos meses a nivel mundial. Yo creo que se nos ha olvidado que los derechos humanos fueron creados en favor de las minorías. Con esto me refiero a mujeres, latinos, migrantes, afroamericanos, afrodescendientes, indígenas, minorías sexuales, entre otras categorías, con el fin de protegernos contra las supremacías poderosas, entre ellas la supremacía blanca. El racismo, para mí, lejos de ser un mal recuerdo de nuestra historia o de nuestras culturas, creo que sigue estando presente día a día. El color de tu piel te define a la hora de hacer valer tus derechos. Y este es un tema que a mí me gusta tocar y me gusta trabajar con, porque si bien vengo de Chile, que es un país tercermundista, aún en Chile tú encuentras racismo en contra del hermano inmigrante latinoamericano, pero es curioso, porque el racismo no existe contra el turista europeo blanco que visita Chile, sino contra el hermano boliviano moreno. Entonces, si eso no es racismo, entonces, ¿qué es? En mi experiencia personal, al ser mujer y latina viviendo en Estados Unidos, sí he sentido racismo por parte de los americanos. Por eso es un tema que me sienta tan bien trabajar, porque lo he vivido yo. Puedo dar mi testimonio y mi experiencia a través de lo que yo he vivido. Y al final del día considero que es tarea de todos luchar contra los estereotipos, contra los metaestereotipos y contra los prejuicios que nos han sido enseñados desde que nacimos, y debemos unirnos todos en contra de su erradicación, y no olvidar que somos todos iguales en dignidad y derechos.
I will go on to another topic, which is the issue of human rights violation. And it has returned to the social arena worldwide in recent months. It has been forgotten that the human rights were created in favor of us minorities. I speak of women, African Americans, the poor, migrants, indigenous peoples, amongst others, to avoid the abuse and mistreatment of the prevailing white supremacists, including of the prevailing white supremacy. Racism, far from being a bad memory in our country, in our universal history, continues. It continues in Chile today, and we still face it in our day-to-day. Skin color is still important when exercising your rights. This is a topic that I like to work on because in my country there is racism against our Latin American brothers and sisters. It's interesting because if an immigrant is not a white European tourist, he's not tolerated against, he's actually discriminated against. So those that are discriminated against are those that are the minority and indigenous. If that's not racism, then I don't know what is. In my personal experience, being a woman and Latina, I have experienced racism by Americans here in the United States. And that is one of the reasons that drives me to make this topic visible. I think that it's everyone's duty to fight the stereotypes and prejudices that have been taught to us, and we must unite against its eradication. We are all equal in dignity and in rights.
So, en mi último eje temático sobre en el cual me sirvo para realizar algunas de mis ilustraciones es el empoderamiento femenino y el amor propio que he ido aprendiendo a lo largo de estos años con el estudio del feminismo. Este es uno de mis tópicos favoritos, el cual me siento muy cómoda de trabajar, porque son el fiel reflejo de lo que siento que puedo expresar a través de estas ilustraciones, el poco conocimiento que creo tener sobre diversos temas. Todas estas ilustraciones están inspiradas en mi camino de construcción personal que estoy viviendo, y mi lucha interna contra el patriarcado, contra el sexismo y contra todo lo normal que se nos ha impuesto, como dije anteriormente. El amarnos tal cual somos hoy en día es un acto totalmente de revolución. El dejar de ver a las otras compañeras como competencia, el dejar de cumplir los estereotipos machistas, todo eso son actos revolucionarios y políticos. Con optimismo creo que podemos decir que el cambio de paradigma y la lucha feminista ha llegado para quedarse, y creo firmemente que las futuras generaciones de nuestras niñas y nuestras mujeres podrán enfocarse netamente en las políticas públicas, dejar lo niño de lado, refiriéndome netamente como a los estereotipos machistas, y vamos a ir ganando espacio en las decisiones importantes y dejando de ser las ciudadanas de segunda clase que hemos sido hasta ahora.
And to finish up, I wanted to talk about a feminine empowerment and self-love that feminism has taught me. It's one of my favorite topics that themes that I'm working on. I feel the most comfortable doing these illustrations because they're the true reflection of what I feel. All these illustrations are inspired by my path of deconstruction and my internal struggle against patriarchy, against sexism, and against everything normal that has been imposed on us. So loving each other as we are, ceasing to see each other as the competition, leaving behind the machista stereotypes. These are all revolutionary and political acts. With optimism, I can say that there is a paradigm shift in the feminist struggle is here to stay. The future generations of women will be able to focus clearly on public policies, gaining space in important decision making, and ceasing to be a second-class citizens.
So, con todo y ya terminando mi presentación, me gustaría ser consciente de que la vida real de todos nosotros no está en redes sociales. El hecho de compartir etiquetas, de compartir cuadrados negros, de postear cuadrados negros en redes sociales, no es más que un placebo. El verdadero cambio está en las calles, el verdadero cambio está votando, está legislando. Entiendo ahora que por toda la situación del coronavirus se torna un poco más difícil poder tener un real activismo, pero no nos dejemos engañar, no todo está en redes sociales, la gente necesita nuestra ayuda en las calles, haciendo un cambio con nosotros mismos, en nuestra propia forma de vivir la vida y vivir la vida con los otros. Ahí está el cambio, no en los likes o compartiendo, compartiendo diversos posts. Es eso, enfocarnos en todos hacer cambios para lograr de este mundo un mundo más justo y seguro para todos.
In all, I would like for everyone to be made aware that real life is not living on our social networks. This is the passive activism that the networks that social media gives us, and it's nothing more than a placebo. So posting black squares, that's not real society. Sharing hashtags and drawing pictures only helps us to make the already obvious visible, that we need to be outside, we need to be out in the streets, we need to be in community with one another. It has been very difficult in this time during quarantine, but that is where society really needs us at this time. The real challenges for everyone, including myself, is to make real changes focused on obtaining a more just and secure world for everybody.
So, well, that was my presentation today. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. And if you have some question, please feel free to ask me.
Thanks so much, Muriel. And yes, if anybody has questions, please plug them in. Everybody's been dropping some really awesome comments, supportive comments. And yeah, I mean, any questions or anything, please plug them in.
I'd also like to give a shout out to Marissa for that fantastic translation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marissa. Thank you so much.
I spoke Spanish, but that translation was real, like that was so fast. It was like a machine or something. It was incredible.
I know, I was like, how did you catch so much?
Because we did a great job together, right, Marissa? That's why.
For a second, I was like, she's got cheating.
No, I have a cheat sheet. Tengo una hoja de...
No lo digas.
It's a cheat sheet. What I will say though, as an organizer that engages also in language justice, it is important that we understand what it takes to bring multiple languages into spaces. Lo que yo digo es como una organizadora que trabaja con la justicia del idioma, también es importante estar pensando cómo podemos incluir a varios idiomas dentro de un espacio como estos.
Muchas gracias por eso.
That's all. Bye.
You're out? You're leaving us? Yeah, I mean, just you showing, even with Ina, showing the parallel sort of movements happening in each country at the same time, and it's been ongoing. And then, you know, America having been living in such a bubble and seeing the accountability being demanded now by the masses. It's I wonder, for Muriel, how you feel about seeing it happen in Chile and then kind of being here in the States. I know that you feel, where you mentioned you feel a little bit disconnected, not being able to be at home, but then also seeing the level of activism here in its own space. You know, where do you stand? I mean, it must be emotionally stressful, I imagine.
Yeah. It is, to be honest, it is, because when all these things started in my country, only was able to see like in social media with my family that they call me, and I feel really sad to be like so far away from them, you know, because I know my people, I know my country, I know like their fight is right, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, why I'm here? I remember that I started like questioning like what am I doing like living here in the United States when I don't know how to say in English, when my place is at home with, I mean, in Chile, you know what I'm saying? So it's really hard, but I don't know what's my decision. And now I'm living here in the United States, like trying to do my own life, like building my own family with Christian and Cooper. But I will never like forget my roots, you know? So that's my whole point.
And we presented you a bunch of American problems now that you can take on. No, I feel you, because I mean, obviously it's a little different for you and I, because you actually live and grew up in Chile. But for me, I remember feeling really frustrated and so connected to a lot of the economic injustices that was going on in Cambodia during the upcoming elections, which was supposed to be a huge one. I actually had the opportunity to fly over there, you know, participate in protests, and this is going to be another question for both, you know, Ina and Muriel, and being of a different generation, and, you know, having more of the drive and the need and less of that fear of raising your voice, because maybe our parents existed during a different time in which the repercussions of being socially active was in a different type of danger, where it was like a very, very immediate danger. It was just a different time. Do you both get a lot of pushback from your parents about being politically active?
Who goes first? Can I? Okay, so I came from a, how do you say, a very traditional family, like Republican family, or no?
Yeah, like the equivalent of a conservative.
Yeah. So for my parents, everything that I do, everything that I talk is like like bullshit, you know, like you don't have to do that because you have all this privilege and whatever. So they don't listen to me. They don't listen like the people, the president Chile, because they are not in their shoes. You know that I'm saying? They are living like a different reality, and I think they are so selfish to see there is another reality. So that's for my family.
I think when I have come, my family we're from New Jersey, so we're rowdy and we fight. We're from New Jersey, but both my parents have always been rowdy, and also my mom, who is a nurse but had taken to the streets when the teachers union in New Jersey was on strike. And then before that, my mother's mother was, she wasn't part of a union, but she organized a teacher strike when she came here from the Philippines. She was actually an English teacher and a Spanish teacher, weirdly enough. And also, like, I just come from a long line of people who just don't want to take it. But also, I didn't know that until I became an organizer and started asking my parents about the history. But I think that there has always been state violence, and I think in today's like current media, there's just ways to there's ways to I guess the oppressor's propaganda has always found a way to hide what's happening, had a way to hide state violence. And I think now with the hyper visibility of violence happening globally, it is kind of like this catalyst for youth to recognize that it's not just electoral politics that's going to win us a revolution. It's people it's people throwing rock at the window. It's people who are organizing. It's people who are doing education within their communities. It's people who are doing art like Muriel. It's people who are doing that cultural work. It's people that are talking to their parents. It's people that are going into communities and struggling it out with their communities, from the masses and to the masses. If we can't win over our parents, if we can't win over community members who are they're part of you, as hard as it is, it's like struggling that out, and doing that resistance and in the ways that it makes sense for you. And yeah, I don't know if I answered that question. Jersey.
No, you did. It's definitely I think that question just kind of is about sort of the identity, and when the intersection of the gender and the politics and, you know, where you're coming from, where you're here. That is very much part of the diaspora narrative that tends to be overlooked because we aren't given the opportunity to show the nuance of our existence. And you know, I'm gonna have Barrett kind of like end it, close it, but when I was thinking about heritage and identity, it made me think of one of your weekly newsletters, which the Sustainable Culture Lab puts out every Sunday, in which you highlighted the word essence. And I think it really ties into heritage and identity when it comes to existence and essence. Because I mean, the way that I kind of looked at it was like heritage is sort of like your existence, right? And then identity, your identity is the essence. But I'm not going to speak on it because that was part of your word that you put out. But I think it's a great way for you to kind of like tie it all in.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Unless you wanted to tie it in some other way. That was kind of the thing that made me think about it.
Yeah, no, Raquel, did you have a question? Oh, okay, let's unmute Raquel. There you go, unmuted.
Thank you. I just wanted to say tonight has been awesome. Thank you to the artists that spoke today, and thank you, Marissa, for your translation. My question is for both Muriel and for Ina. Given what's happening now in the U.S. in terms of just the protests and how many people are active and actually trying to make a difference, are you hopeful for the future?
You first.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say except for yes, because if you don't have hope, you know, you can't really continue to fight. I think there's this like overwhelming manifestation of anger, and it's always been growing, and it has grown so because it's embedded in our ancestors and it's embedded in history. But I think there's also an overwhelming amount of love, right, for your people, for your communities, and I think taking those aspects of love and rage, like I love my people more than I hate the oppressor. I think I choose to organize because of the overwhelming amount of love I have for my communities and the people who have raised me and taught me, and all of the resilient communities that I've met. But yeah.
So first of all, I want to say sorry for my English. I know it sucks, but I'm still learning it. So I would love to say more that actually I'm doing, but I will say yes. I have hope in people, but I will say I have more like trust in new generations, you know that I'm saying, because I know it's hard for all people, even for my parents, it's hard for them to change their minds, their way to be. So, but I mean, it's okay. There are different times. They came from different times, but I really have a big hope in new generations. So I will say yes.
So I was gonna ask some questions here that we have, but it is in Spanish.
I know who he is.
I could read it, but I could embarrass myself. But
come on, go ahead. I already did it with English.
I'll let you, Maria, you read it out loud.
Okay, so first question from Delian Mendoza from Maipú, Chile. Amiga, I feel you. So she's asking me, hi everyone. Muriel, you go to law school in Chile. How you can mix this knowledge or no?
Yeah, I just
this. Oh, so Christian already did it. So Muriel,
thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, I love you, baby. So you went to law school in Chile. How do you use that knowledge in your illustration? Well, yeah, I went to law school in Chile, but I never took the bar. So I'm just finished law school and that's it. And I think like having a little more knowledge, I mean, from the media, it's made me like, I don't know, understand everything better. But I don't like to use this, how do you call like conocimiento,
Knowledge?
knowledge, like to feel me superior than others, you know, I will love to use it like to teach the others, you know, because I don't think I have a lot of knowledge, but the little that I have, I would love to share with everyone and put it on my illustration to be able to spread the message. Esa es tu respuesta, Belén.
Thanks, Christian. You're hired. You translate.
And I have another Spanish question here from Begoña de Peñalolén, Chile. So you're ready, Chris?
Yeah, it says.
Can you hear him, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, it says, Muriel, what do you think is the minimum in terms of activism, just like coronavirus context?
Okay, so what do you think if I respond her in Spanish and then you can translate?
Yeah.
He feel nervous about that. Okay, but come here. So, ¿cuál crees que tú son los mínimos en cuanto a activismo, sobre todo en este contexto de coronavirus? So, sé que en estos tiempos es difícil hacer un cambio verdadero y por eso nos limitamos a hacer activismo pasivo en redes sociales, lo cual no lo critico, pero considero que no debe ser nuestra meta, creo que es la base a, y nada, sé que en estos tiempos de coronavirus no podemos hacer más, está siempre la posibilidad de votar, las elecciones acá son en noviembre, los invito a votar, las elecciones en Chile por el proceso constitucional son en octubre, también vayan a votar, es nuestro derecho, es nuestro deber, y nada, es cuestionarte tu espacio, cuestionarte tu zona de confort, hacer pequeños cambios que hagan un cambio en tu paradigma, en tu forma de ser interna para ti y con los otros.
So I think
I think?
Sorry. I just try to synthesize everything. So it's kind of like hard to put it this way in the times that we're living in right now with the pandemic, but it is good to do some retrospective to like just look inside everyone and just try to do the change from within, from the inside. It's cool to do some passive activism on social media. I think that will be the minimum. But I'd invite everyone to vote. The elections are in November. In Chile, we have elections in October. So that's when we have our chance to actually make a change. And we have all this time with this pandemic to just actually focus on be better as a person and just do the change from within. I think that will be the best way in this situation. Just keep the activism as much as we can, even in social media, but as soon as we get the chance to actually be out, just take that chance.
Yeah. Esa sería tu respuesta, Begoña. Muchas gracias por la pregunta. Te extraño mucho.
I understood that.
Ah.
Good question.
So I'll chime in with the essence idea that Seda mentioned. I'm just gonna do that unless we have other questions. But I think a key part of my philosophical work, and we actually talked about this last week too, is this idea of existentialism, this philosophy of existentialism. And the premise of it, it's real simple. You just prioritize existence ahead of essence. And so then the question is like, what is essence? And essence, frankly, can just be anything. Like essence it's basically something that you attach yourself to that like gives you purpose. Your essence could be church, it could be your skin color, it could be whatever. It can be anything. And essence isn't a bad thing per se, but it is bad when you prioritize essence ahead of existence. And when you think that your religion is so important that you now just get to go kill a bunch of people, now essence is ahead of existence and problems start happening. And I think one of the big things when we think about the US is that the US is based around the essence, the ideas that white people, European colonizers, put in their brains that gave them meaning or purpose, and that essence gave them the justification to just destroy the existence of any person who was an other that they encountered. And then our society was built around that. And I think a lot of people in the US, what becomes a big struggle for, you know, depending on like your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, all of that stuff, is you're being told that your essence is awful. And now your goal is to try to prove that you have a great essence. But that still kind of gets you away from the main focus on existence and creating structures and language and cultures that prioritize the existence first, and then let people do all of their essence stuff second. And one of the big things that I think is happening right now, and I think the Black Lives Matter movement is actually talking about this without thinking of it with an existential language, is that it's saying that Black Lives Matter, where like the lives matter. We've determined that, you know, America has created these, you know, has given African people this essence that means that they are supposed to be targeted and viewed negatively, and all sorts of negative projections that are thrust on my community. And so clearly one part of the Black community works to show that our essence isn't what white people say it is. But Black Lives Matter is showing like, actually, let's just kind of forget about the whole essence part. We're just focusing about existence. Like, these lives matter. Now, what structures are we going to do that prioritize the existence of Black lives, and clearly the lives of other people, but other people, other groups haven't had the institutional, structural, like ethnocidal destruction that Black people have had in this country with this ethnocidal structure. And so it's a really important conversation when we talk about like heritage and identity, because your heritage is the thing that gives you purpose. But as you move and relocate to places, your identity and your heritage, it'll evolve and it'll change. And as you go and relocate and move places, the key thing is that you want people to value your existence in each one of those places, and not use your heritage as something to stamp you with a negative essence that you can be demonized and subjected to, like, you know, oppression. And that's kind of a key part of this conversation. And art and imagery kind of helps show that. And so, yes, a couple weeks ago, one of the words was essence, and I sent an essay to people on Sunday articulating what I said now, but with different words. So thanks for teeing me up on that one, Seda. I'm really like, it's also, I will say one thing that's really cool about the newsletter, The Word, is when I interact with friends and people, and they just like say a word that I mentioned like 4 weeks ago. And it's like,
Always.
Like that word stayed in your brain, and now you're using it just like normally to articulate stuff that that's fantastic. Like,
people are listening, Barrett.
it's just really cool what happens. Like if someone gets like 5 more words in their vocabulary that helps them articulate something that they've seen, but like didn't really know how to say, like 5 words actually makes a big difference. And so it's kind of cool. So I felt good that you teed me up on that one.
Of course, you know, I'm paying attention to
yeah.
to your work. And if there's any word that you're gonna remember after this month, is gonna be ethnocide, guys. Ethnocide.
Big word. Okay. So yeah, you have the list of stuff to tell people to like check out so that they.
Yes. So and thank you all so much for joining. Next week is going to be, if you join in next week, same time, same link. I hope same link. You know, I think we finally figured out our Zoom, right? Next week's topic is going to be migration and displacement. And it's going to be specific to DC as well as abroad. So that'll be a really fun, interesting one. But yes, we had a lot of folks asking about buying art, which we're really excited about. 100% of your art purchase goes to the artist. And then if you decide to, you know, donate to the talk that we're doing, we're splitting it between SCL and the Sustainable Culture Lab and SAMASAMA, as well as, you know, making sure that a percentage of the 10% goes to GC's chapter of Movement for Black Lives. So we will get a follow-up, all of the material of links before Ina, for Muriel, and check out samasamaart.com, and you'll also be able to get the link to Sustainable Culture Lab as well, which is scl.community. Am I correct? Thank you, Jack.
Yep. And scl.community is the URL. And if you want to check out the newsletter or any other stuff, the newsletter is scl.community/theword. But if you go to the website, you can get plenty of information about this. And for the future events, it's scl.community/events. And yeah, that was that. I think I'm done.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Mestizos throughout the earth. Join hands across the sea. Mestizos around the world. Body cross, walk tall and hold your head up high. Latino, Taíno, Chicano, Cubano, Dominicano, Argentino, Colombiano, Moreno, Cubano, Chicano, Taíno, Latino, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Puerto Rico, Moreno, funky hair, baby, and rainbow skin. Hot tamales, baby, that's what I need. Latino, Taíno, Chicano, Cubano, Dominicano, Argentino, Colombiano, Moreno. Climb high, everybody. Reach for the moon. No time to stop. Say, climb high, everybody. Reach out. Mestizos everywhere. It's time to survive. Yes, we gotta stay strong. United, fight for our song. Mestizos shout aloud.